We don't walk away from our allies. We stand with them. We don't let tyrants win. We oppose them. We don't merely watch global events unfold. We shape them. That's what it means to be the indispensable nation. That's what it means to be the world's superpower and the world's leading democracy. But this vote makes it clear there is a bipartisan consensus for that kind of American leadership. That's exactly what we'll continue to deliver.
We shape events. And you can see here, just of these two scenarios that we've talked about here, one in the Middle East and one in Europe, we're not shaping anything. Everything's being shaped. Well, let me correct that. By and large, like Israel is shaping us. We're in the passenger seat, they're in the driver's seat. And in the Russia-Ukraine situation, we're kind of driving things, just not in a peaceful direction. How do you view his view of the world with the one that actually exists?
It's entirely militaristic and very unrealistic. The world doesn't want more wars. That's what we do. We do military things. As I was describing earlier, we don't do diplomacy anymore. We don't even seem to know what it is. So, yes, we're shaping events. We've managed to shape Europe into a war in which hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, as well as Russians, have died. We are guilty of betraying our allies. I think the Nord Stream pipeline is a great example of that, although we've not had any investigation of that incident, but it does appear that that was done by us. We did walk away from Afghanistan. We're being thrown out of Niger and Chad. We are under pressure to leave Iraq because we're doing things that violate Iraqi sovereignty. Yes, we're shaping the world into a completely lawless might makes right situation. We're shaping the situation with China in such a way that Chinese see fewer and fewer alternatives to a war over Taiwan. We are shaping the situation with Iran so that they remain our perpetual enemy. This is ridiculous. It would be funny if it were not so consequential. We will pay the price for this kind of delusional statement and perception.
Yeah, I do fear that. And so, I mean, this is almost like, you know, how would you fix the Titanic after it hit the iceberg? Maybe we're in that situation right now. But if you could only list 3 things that you would change about American foreign policy, whether publicly or privately, what would you do?
I'd start by reinstating respect for foreign opinion. That is how our country began. The Declaration of Independence cites a decent opinion of mankind as one of our objectives. We don't show respect to foreigners. We go and we lecture them. We need to listen to them. We need to demonstrate the empathy that is the basis of a constructive relationship. That's across the board. Second, I would pursue peace in Ukraine before Ukraine is further shrunk and devastated by a war that is continually escalating. What we're doing now is escalating the war. We are giving the Ukrainians weapons with which to shoot deep into Russia, despite the fact that we know the Russians will shoot back ever more heavily and destroy more infrastructure and kill more people in Ukraine. So that's the second thing that I would do. And third, I would try to re-examine what commitments we have made and why we've abandoned them with China, for example. Because if we get into a war with China, the only certain result is the total destruction of Taiwan's industry, which would be devastating for the global economy, and its democracy, which would be an unnecessary loss of great consequences. As long as Taiwan exists as a Chinese society and is democratic, which it is, and has a respect for civil and human rights, which it does, there is hope that this may spread to the rest of China in time, because Taiwan sets a good example. If we destroy that, we will see a different China, which will be not one we don't like. Finally, if we get into a war with China, there are crazy people on our side who talk about using nuclear weapons. We've threatened that on at least 3 and possibly 6 occasions with the Chinese before. If we do that, we'll get nuclear weapons fired at us. I'm happy to be in New Hampshire. I think you're in the DC area. You better hide under the desk.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be much worth it by then. Yeah, I don't think it'll be good for anybody at that point. And that's if it goes nuclear. Even if it didn't go nuclear, such a war would, by all accounts, absolutely devastate our entire Indo-Pacific force and would crush our ability. I think it would change forever the view of American, global power.
I think American global power is already under a denigrated perception. That is to say, when was the last time we won a war? Against whom? When was the last time when we did win a war, like the Gulf War of 1990-91, when we shaped events to produce a better peace?
Better outcome, yeah.
When was the last time? And so I don't think, and if you look at what it means to get into a war with us on your side, think about the fact that the Congress fiddled for 6 months while Ukraine floundered. What kind of example does that set of steadfast support of allies? Are we perceived as wise and worth following? I don't see the evidence for that. So I think even in the military terms, which seems to be the only ones we consider, we're taking a hit. And if we get into a war with China, by the way, every war game that's been played shows we lose the bulk of our Air Force and our Navy. Yes. They do too. But they produce 70 times more tonnage of ships per year than we do. They are in the position vis-a-vis us that we were in vis-a-vis Japan in World War II. They are able to reconstitute and supplement their armed forces with huge new building. We're not. We don't have the capability.
And, as an aside, that's the CSIS path of I think it was 24 scenarios that they ran in their computer simulation. One of the key things that really stood out to me when looking at the after action report where they talked about it was that they only ran it for about 3 weeks, and that's the damage done to the Air Force and the Navy especially. But from what I can understand from other sources is that China is aware of some of the dynamics that we have recently seen play out in Israel and in the Russia-Ukraine war in terms of air defense. So if our naval ships worked, their air defense worked flawlessly and 100% were knocked down, after about 2 weeks, we run out of interceptor missiles. And China makes enough of those that they can saturate it, and every ship could be sunk. I think it could be much worse than they play out.
Well, it could be, but let me make a fundamental point here. China has been involved with Taiwan since 1642, when a rival dynasty was set up following the fall of the Ming and the establishment of the Qing in Beijing. For 40 years, in 11 different attempts, in which cost probably 500,000 lives, the Chinese mainland attempted to reunite Taiwan with it. It finally succeeded in 1682. And
I was not aware
it went on for 40 years through 11 attempts. The assumption that if you win a battle over Taiwan, you've won the war,
it's over.
Is absolute nonsense. This is something Chinese care passionately about.
Wow.
It's part of their country, and we would devote endless resources to recovering California if somehow it were taken by Japan or China or Russia or Mexico. We would never give up. And it's a mistake to imagine the Chinese will give up either. So these scenarios that run short, victorious wars are absolute crap, to put it.
Wow, I never thought of it in those terms either. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but that is such a profound truth. It just reiterates our myopic view of everything. We don't look beyond one election cycle or one battle, and that could really come back to haunt us someday.